I found out my girlfriend was cheating after 4 years. The truth broke me. And she lied right to my face. Listen, I never thought I'd be writing something like this. But here I am at 3 a.m., unable to sleep, trying to make sense of what just happened to my life. Maybe putting this down will help me process it, or maybe someone out there has been through something similar and can tell me I'm not going crazy. My name is Robert, I'm 28, and until 3 days ago, I thought I had my life figured out. I was with Sophie, my girlfriend of 4 years, and we were planning to move in together next month. We'd already put a deposit down on this amazing apartment downtown, picked out furniture, the whole 9 yards. I was even thinking about proposing next year. Sophie is 26, works as a marketing coordinator at a tech startup, and I genuinely believed she was the love of my life. We met at a coffee shop near my office where I work as a software developer. She was struggling with her laptop, I offered to help, and we ended up talking for 3 hours. It was one of those movie moment meetings that you hear about but never think will happen to you. For 4 years, everything seemed perfect. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but nothing major. We traveled together, supported each other's careers, and talked about our future constantly. Sophie always said she'd never been happier, that I was different from all the guys she'd dated before. I believed her completely. The first red flag should have been when she started working late more often about 6 months ago. Sophie had always been dedicated to her job, but suddenly she was staying until 9 or 10 p.m. several nights a week. When I'd pick her up, she'd seem distracted, almost jumpy. I chalked it up to work stress and tried to be supportive. Then came the phone calls. Sophie started getting calls she wouldn't answer when I was around, letting them go to voicemail instead. When I asked about it, she'd say it was work stuff or her sister calling about drama I wouldn't want to hear about. I trusted her, so I never pushed. The real warning sign was when she started going out with her co-workers more frequently. Every Friday became team bonding night, and sometimes she wouldn't come home until 2 or 3 a.m. She'd stumble in, claiming they'd gone to karaoke or some new bar downtown. Again, I wanted to trust her, but something felt off. About 2 months ago, Sophie started acting different physically too. She'd push me away when I tried to hug her sometimes, saying she was tired or stressed. Our intimate life, which had always been amazing, started declining rapidly. When I tried to talk to her about it, she'd get defensive and say I was being needy. The breaking point came last Tuesday. Sophie said she had to work late again, but something in my gut told me to check. I know this makes me sound paranoid, but I drove by her office building around 8 p.m. Her car wasn't there. The building was mostly dark except for security lighting. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, trying to rationalize it. Maybe she'd gone to dinner with clients. Maybe she'd parked somewhere else. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I called her phone, and it went straight to voicemail. I texted asking if everything was okay, and she responded an hour later saying she was swamped with work. That night, when Sophie came home at 11 p.m., I confronted her gently. I told her I'd driven by her office and asked where she'd been. The look on her face told me everything I needed to know before she even spoke. It was pure panic, followed by what I now recognize as the look of someone scrambling to come up with a lie. She claimed she'd gone to a client dinner at a restaurant across town, that her phone had died, and that she'd forgotten to mention it to me earlier. But her story had holes. She couldn't remember the name of the restaurant, couldn't tell me who the client was, and when I hugged her, I smelled cologne that definitely wasn't mine. I couldn't sleep that night. Sophie was right next to me, but she felt like a stranger. I lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was being paranoid or if my relationship was falling apart. The next morning, I made a decision that still makes me feel sick. I decided to look at her phone. Sophie always kept her phone face down and had recently changed her passcode, which she'd never hidden from me before. But I remembered seeing her enter it a few weeks earlier. While she was in the shower Wednesday morning, I grabbed her phone with shaking hands. What I found destroyed me completely. There were hundreds of text messages with someone named Derek. The messages went back 3 months. At first, they seemed innocent enough, work-related conversations since Derek apparently worked at the same company. But as I scrolled through, they became increasingly flirtatious, then explicitly sexual. I read messages where Sophie told this Derek that she'd never felt the way he made her feel. Messages where they planned secret meetups. Messages where she complained about me, calling me clingy, and saying she felt trapped in our relationship. There were photos I never want to think about again. The worst part was reading her tell Derek that she was planning to break up with me after we moved in together, that she was just waiting for the right time, and didn't want to deal with the apartment situation right now. I was just a convenience to her, a placeholder while she figured out her exit strategy. I screenshot everything with trembling hands, sent the evidence to my own phone, then put her phone back exactly where I found it. When Sophie came out of the bathroom, I acted normal, kissed her goodbye, and told her I loved her just like any other morning. She smiled and said she loved me too, then left for work, probably to see Derek. I called in sick that day and spent 8 hours walking around the city, trying to process what I'd learned. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, but another part of me hoped I'd misunderstood somehow. Maybe there was an explanation that would make this all make sense. By evening, I'd made my decision. When Sophie came home, at a normal time for once, probably to avoid suspicion, I was waiting for her with printouts of the text messages laid out on our kitchen table. The moment she saw them, Sophie's face went white. She didn't even try to deny it initially. She just stood there staring at the papers like they might disappear if she looked long enough. "How long?" was all I could manage to say. "Robert, I can explain," she started, but I cut her off. "How long, Sophie?" "3 months," she whispered, then immediately started crying. But it didn't mean anything. It was just, I don't know. I was confused. 3 months. A quarter of our last year together had been a lie. While I was planning our future, picking out furniture for our new place, she was planning her escape and sleeping with someone else. What followed was the most painful conversation of my life. Sophie went through every excuse in the book. She said Derek pursued her aggressively at work and she didn't know how to handle it. She claimed she was scared of commitment and self-sabotaged our relationship. She insisted that she loved me and that Derek meant nothing. But then she said something that made me realize how little she actually cared about me. I was going to end it with him before we moved in together. You would never have known. She wasn't sorry she'd cheated. She was sorry she'd gotten caught. She'd planned to continue lying to me, to let me commit to a lease and a life with her while she figured out whether she wanted me or Derek more. I was just an option to her. I asked her to leave that night. Sophie begged me to let her stay, promising she'd end things with Derek immediately, swearing she'd do anything to fix this. But I couldn't look at her without seeing those text messages, couldn't touch her without wondering where she'd been and who she'd been with. She packed a bag and went to her sister's place. Before she left, she tried one more time to convince me that we could work through this, that couples recover from infidelity all the time. She said Derek was just a mistake, and that I was the one she really wanted. But here's the thing that really gets me. If I hadn't discovered the truth, Sophie would have kept lying indefinitely. She would have moved in with me, probably continued seeing Derek, and eventually left me for him when it became convenient. I would have been funding her exit strategy with my half of the rent and deposits. The next day, I called our landlord and canceled the lease. Losing the deposit hurt financially, but keeping my sanity was worth more. I also had to call all the furniture stores and cancel our orders, explaining to confused salespeople that I wouldn't be needing a dining set for 2 anymore. Sophie has been texting and calling constantly for 3 days. She claims she's ended things with Derek, that she realizes what she lost, that she wants to fight for us. But I keep thinking about those messages where she called me clingy and trapped. Those weren't written in the heat of passion, they were her honest feelings about our relationship. Yesterday, I made the mistake of looking at Sophie's social media. She'd already changed her relationship status to single, and posted some quote about new beginnings and finding yourself. Meanwhile, I'm over here grieving the death of a 4-year relationship and trying to figure out how to rebuild my life. The hardest part isn't even the betrayal, though that cuts deep. It's the realization that the person I thought I knew never really existed. The Sophie I loved was kind, honest, and committed to our future together. The real Sophie is someone who can lie to my face for months while planning to leave me for someone else. I keep wondering what I missed, what signs I ignored. Were there other red flags I dismissed because I wanted to believe in us so badly? Should I have confronted her earlier when things felt off? Would it have made any difference? My friends have been amazing through all this. My best friend Jake has let me crash at his place while I figure out my housing situation. He keeps telling me I dodged a bullet, that it's better I found out now than after we were married or had kids together. Logically, I know he's right, but emotionally I'm still devastated. The worst moments are when I forget what happened and reach for my phone to text Sophie about something funny or interesting I saw. Then reality hits me again, and I remember that the person I want to share my life with is the same person who destroyed it. I've been doing a lot of thinking about trust and relationships. Sophie wasn't some master manipulator. She was just someone who got in over her head and chose to lie rather than have a difficult conversation. But that choice revealed something fundamental about her character that I can never unsee. People keep asking if I'd consider taking her back if she really commits to making changes. The answer is no, and here's why. Even if Sophie ended things with Derek completely, even if she went to therapy and worked on herself, I would never be able to trust her fully again. Every time she worked late, every time she didn't answer her phone, every time she seemed distant, I'd wonder if it was happening again. That's no way to live, and it wouldn't be fair to either of us. I'm also angry at Derek, even though he doesn't owe me anything personally. He knew Sophie was in a committed relationship. She talks about me in some of those messages. He chose to pursue someone who was taken, and that says something about his character too. I can't understand people who are willing to be the other person in someone's affair. What really bothers me is how calculated this whole thing seems in hindsight. Sophie didn't just cheat once in a moment of weakness. She carried on a 3-month affair while planning our future together, lying every single day. She was essentially auditioning Derek as my replacement while using me for emotional and financial stability. The financial aspect stings too. Over the past few months, while Sophie was cheating, I paid for our vacation to Mexico, countless dinners out, and even a weekend getaway for her birthday. I was investing in our relationship while she was secretly planning to leave it. It makes me feel like a fool. I've started therapy to help process all of this. My therapist says it's normal to feel angry, betrayed, and confused after discovering infidelity. She's helping me work through my trust issues and figure out how to move forward without becoming bitter or cynical about relationships in general. One thing therapy has taught me is that Sophie's cheating isn't a reflection of my worth as a partner. I was loving, supportive, and committed. Her inability to appreciate that and her choice to lie and cheat are about her character flaws, not mine. But I won't lie. This has shaken my confidence. I find myself wondering if I missed obvious signs, if I was too trusting, if I'm naive about relationships. I'm scared about dating again someday, about opening myself up to this kind of pain again. My family has been incredibly supportive. My mom, who always loved Sophie, was shocked when I told her what happened. She said she never would have expected this from someone she thought she knew so well. That actually made me feel a little better. If my mom, who has great instincts about people, didn't see this coming, maybe I'm not as oblivious as I thought. Looking back, I can see now that Sophie and I probably weren't as compatible as I believed. I'm someone who values honesty, commitment, and open communication. Sophie, apparently, is someone who avoids difficult conversations and makes selfish choices when things get complicated. Those are fundamental incompatibilities that would have caused problems eventually. The hardest part now is letting go of the future I'd imagined with Sophie. We had so many plans, trips we wanted to take, goals we wanted to achieve together, even names we discussed for future kids. All of that is gone now, and I have to rebuild my vision for my life from scratch. But you know what? Maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. I'm 28, I have a good career, and I'm learning things about myself through this process. I'm discovering that I'm stronger than I thought, that I can handle betrayal and disappointment without falling apart completely. I'm also learning to trust my instincts better. If I'm being honest, there were signs that something was wrong in our relationship beyond just the cheating. Sophie had become increasingly critical of little things I did, more easily annoyed with my habits and preferences. She'd started making decisions without consulting me and seemed less interested in spending quality time together. I think she was already checking out emotionally long before Derek came into the picture. Sophie texted me again this morning, asking if we could meet for coffee to talk about everything. I haven't responded yet, and I'm not sure I will. What is there to talk about? She made her choice when she decided to lie to me for 3 months. She made her choice when she planned to use me as a backup plan while she explored other options. My friends keep telling me that someday I'll be grateful this happened before we got married or bought a house together, and I'm sure they're right. But right now, I'm just trying to get through each day and figure out how to trust someone again eventually. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, you're not crazy if you have suspicions about your partner's behavior. Trust your instincts. And if you discover you've been betrayed, know that it's not your fault and you deserve better than someone who can lie to your face while planning their exit strategy. I don't know what comes next for me, but I know it doesn't involve Sophie. For the first time in 4 years, I'm single, and while that's scary, it's also kind of liberating. I get to decide what I want my life to look like without having to consider someone who was secretly planning to leave anyway. Maybe someday I'll look back on this as the moment my real life began. Right now, though, I'm just trying to heal and move forward one day at a time.